Hello, Internet. It's time for me to try my hand at yet another video game Let's Play. This time, I'll be playing the indie gridiron football game Axis Football 26. I've made a lot of content about Axis Football on my main video essay channel in the past, but my Axis content has dried up a bit in the past few years. For one thing, Axis has switched from an annual release model to a biannual release model. There was no Axis Football 25, they just jumped straight from Axis Football 24 to Axis Football 26. Secondly, a lot of my old Axis Football content took the form of video essays comparing Axis Football's gameplay against its main indie competitor, Maximum Football. Well, Maximum Football was cancelled after the release of the 2020 edition, and oh my goodness, has it already been like 5 or 6 years? Jeez. So my main topic of indie football content dried up at that time. Maximum Football has since been relaunched under a different owner, but I haven't gone back to doing the direct comparisons because, honestly, I don't feel like Axis and Maximum are on a level playing field anymore. Axis is still a game that is, as far as I know, being primarily developed by a single full-time developer, while the new Maximum Football has a full-blown publisher behind it and a development studio with multiple developers and a little bit more money to throw around. It's not EA levels of money by any stretch of the imagination, but I still don't see these two games as being direct competitors anymore, and so I've been struggling to find meaningful content ideas for them. I'm hoping that by creating a Let's Play for Axis, I'll be able to talk about the game beyond what I say in my written review on my personal blog, link to which will be in the description, and that won't necessarily stop me from making more content about Axis on my main channel if I do come up with any good ideas for new content beyond just like wish lists and stuff like that. The format for this Let's Play series is still kind of up in the air. We'll kind of see how it goes. I'm going to feel it out as I go. This is my first time doing a football, Let's Play. My thought is that I'll do my own commentary narration for my off-field activities, but I will limit my commentary for the actual football matches and let the in-game commentary do its thing. I may pitch in with my own commentary narration during matches if I feel there's something really interesting to talk about. I will also not be explicitly playing all of the football matches. I will probably play most of the matches in coach mode, with me picking the plays and the CPU executing them, so that I can focus on the off-field team building. I may take full manual control of the on-field action for some matches here and there. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, I think I've already rambled enough, so let's get into the actual game. First and foremost, let's go into settings and implement a setting change that I learned is a good idea from the Manor Lords Let's Plays, which is to turn off all background music. This will make editing the videos so much easier because I don't have to worry about, cuts and edits making the background music sound horrible. Also, I think the music in this game is licensed, like it has lyrics, so there's the chance that it might get copyright struck anyway, so we'll go ahead and remove all the background music just to be safe. So let's go ahead and get into it and start a new franchise. I already know exactly what team I want to play as, but before I pick them, let's go ahead and see who is available in this league. Because, this is not the NFL, so most of you probably are not familiar with any of these teams. They're all, of course, fictional teams. They're not real teams. But first, though, let's talk about this team select screen. Obviously, we see the name of the team and their logo, in this case, the Arizona Heat. There's a section up here showing the overall ratings for their offense, defense, and special teams. And then there's a list down here of their top 3 players. Some of the more interesting information is up here, where we see their total salary and the average age of the players on their roster. The team salary is an important thing because this 2026 edition of Axis Football is the first to include a salary cap for teams. Strangely, and kind of annoyingly, the game does not show what the salary cap is on this screen, so I have no idea how much the salary cap even is, or how much cap room this team might have to work with. This screen also says nothing about the team's overall finances, it says nothing about its coaching staff, and it says nothing about its facilities, along with other things that a user might want to know about before choosing the team, although it does show their offensive and defensive schemes. So I do think that there is a lot of potential room for Axis Football to upgrade and improve this screen to make it a little bit more user-friendly. But let's go ahead and scroll through the team options. So we have here Arizona Heat, Atlanta Razorbacks, Baltimore Paladins, Boston Whalers, Buffalo Grizzlies with a whopping $314 million worth of total salary, Carolina Rattlers, Chicago Lakehawks, Cincinnati Royals, Cleveland Coyotes, Dallas Stampede, Denver Mountaineers, also with well over $300 million in salary, Detroit Firebirds, Green Bay Axemen, even more, almost $324 million in total salary, Houston Bombers, Indianapolis Gladiators, the Kansas City Wranglers with a whopping $347 million in salary. Holy bejesus. But also look at all of these A-rated players. But still, overall ratings don't look all that much different than a lot of the other teams. It's still, Bs and B pluses. I don't think I've seen any team so far that have any A ratings, have we? Las Vegas Outlaws. Los Angeles Tide with by far the lowest total salary of any team we've seen so far, 128, almost 129 million. And overall ratings in the C range, although C plus range, so this probably averages out to, a high C plus or a very low B minus. Louisiana Gladiators, Mexico City Jaguars, so teams in different countries, not all in the United States. There's also some Canadian teams. I don't think we've seen any of the Canadian teams yet. Miami Warriors. Oh, there's someone who actually has an A rating for offense, A minus. I think that's the highest rating we've seen so far. Minnesota Pride, Montreal Terrapins. So here's one of our Canadian teams. I think there's three Canadian teams, I think. So this is the first of which. Nebraska Thunder, New York Barons, Oklahoma City Cyclones, another one of the not-so-good teams, well under $200 million, and one of the rare overall ratings that's lower than a B minus. Orlando Rockets, Philadelphia Express, another apparently not so good team. The Pittsburgh Ironhawks, San Francisco Sharks with $339 million salaries and some A players and still, overall ratings in the low B plus range for average. The Seattle Bruins, the St. Louis Racers, the Tennessee Bloodhounds, another poor team, only $147 million and a C plus average. Another Canadian team, Vancouver Mallards. The Washington Senators, another one of the really bad teams, only $140 million in salary, and again, C plus averages. And the Winnipeg Devil Cats, another one of the worst teams in the league, $172 million salary, and ratings in the C plus range. And that is all of the teams that are available in this game. And the team that I want is the Las Vegas Outlaws. So let's go back and look at Las Vegas. It's being really laggy. Okay. All right, cool. So let's see what we have to work with. We've got team ratings looking like a bunch of Bs, which probably puts us a little bit above average for this league. I think we only saw the one team that had an A minus, Miami, as any of its ratings. That was only offense. So there aren't a whole lot of A-rated teams. Everyone is in the B plus, B minus range. And then there were a few teams that were C pluses. So our salary is $247 million, which should give us a lot of money to work with to build a roster. Again, I do not know what the actual salary cap is, but while we were scrolling, I saw some teams with salaries approaching $350 mil. So assuming that those teams are below the cap to begin the game, we may have over $100 million in cap space, which seems like a lot. So I don't know. Maybe those teams with 350 mil are already well over the cap to begin the game. I don't know. I guess we'll see. In any case, I think we will be in a healthy cap situation. Our team also has an average age of 25.29 years, which, based on an eyeball examination of all the teams, puts us maybe slightly younger than the league average. So let's go ahead and pick Las Vegas. Now we see the league configuration options. Our first choice, probably the most impactful, is whether we want to play an American configuration, which will be inspired by the NFL's conference and division lineups, or a European soccer-style tiered configuration in which teams can be promoted and relegated to different tiers based on their success or failure. I'm actually going to go with the tiered setting, and this is because I already play Madden, which, I want to note, I always buy used off of eBay a week or two after release so that EA does not get a penny from me. I think the last Madden game that I actually paid full retail for was Madden 2017, and the last one before that was on the PlayStation 3, so that's how, rarely I buy a Madden game. So I already get my fix of NFL-style football from playing Madden. As far as I know, besides, I actually do see this tiered configuration as one of Axis Football's unique strengths within the market of football video games. As far as I know, no matter which team you choose, you will always start in the lowest tier, which means that Axis is set up so that no user team is able to immediately compete for a championship. You have to spend at least several seasons working your way up the tiers, which creates a unique challenge and experience that other gridiron football games just do not replicate. This sets Axis Football apart and gives it kind of a fun, unique dynamic compared to its competitors. The new Maximum Football did launch its own franchise mode in 2025. I have not played that franchise mode yet because I really did not like how their College Dynasty player progression and experience systems worked, and that just turned me off of this new Maximum Football game entirely, even though I thought it actually had a lot of promise as a live service game. Because I think I think sports is one of the few game genres where live service really makes sense. One of the problems with Madden's annual release cycle is that, as a franchise player, I put in so much time and effort into team building over multiple years in game, doing drafts and free agent signings and all that stuff and developing, players and rookies and so forth, only for next year's edition of the game to come out and wipe all that out. And then I have to restart from scratch. And the same thing even happens with Axis, although now it's happening on a 2-year cycle instead of a 1-year cycle. But with Maximum Football being a live service, the idea is that you can control one team over the course of many years and develop them over many years without having to worry about a new edition of the game being released and completely resetting your rosters every year or every 2 years. Unfortunately, I don't think that the game's Dynasty mechanics, it originally launched with a College Dynasty mode and not a professional franchise mode. The professional franchise mode was added in later. So I've only played the College Dynasty, and I did not think that its progression systems were well suited to playing a multi-year Dynasty. It was plagued by a lot of problems that you would expect from a free-to-play live service style game, which I was hoping would not be present, but unfortunately they were. So that just turned me off of that game almost completely, although I would like to go back and try the franchise at some point. I just haven't done it yet. But anyway, as far as I know, Maximum Football's franchise mode does not allow for a tiered league configuration, even though it does have a lot of customization options for setting up the league, including even being able to change how many points a touchdown is worth. But there is no tiered league with promotion and relegation in Maximum Football the way that Axis has. So as far as I know, Axis is still unique in this regard, and it's the only game that does this, and I want to lean into that uniqueness. I think it's actually one of the strengths of this game. Selecting a tiered system also increases the number of teams from 32 to 36, making there be 12 teams in each tier, and I think the schedule will be a round robin in which each team in a tier plays all 11 other teams in their tier, and then maybe they play a few teams outside of their tier, or maybe they just play some teams in their tier twice. I don't actually remember. It has been 2 years since I played Axis Football. But anyway, all these other settings, I'm just going to leave default. I'm not going to randomize rosters. I'm not going to give myself unlimited money and cheat. And I'm also not going to randomize the placement of teams in the different tiers. I will leave the salary cap on, which is going to be interesting in a tiered system, because it ostensibly means that the highest tier teams will have a harder time staying in the top tier by simple virtue of being the richest teams with the most money, because they're still going to be limited by that salary cap. So unless the salary cap is higher in the upper tiers, those teams are going to always be at risk every few years of being demoted, just because they're going to lose some of their highest paid players due to salary cap restrictions. So I don't know how this is going to work, so I guess we'll find out when we'll get into the game. Hopefully Axis's developer or developers, maybe they have some part-time developers working on this as well, I don't know. But hopefully Axis Games put thought into how the salary cap would work for the tiered system, and it's not just an afterthought. So hopefully this won't just like completely break the tiered league format. And then there's all of these options for strength of players in the free agent and draft pools. I'm going to leave these default as well. I thought about tweaking the trade offers to see if we get more, but I'm going to leave it on normal, at least for now. I'm not sure what even would happen if I were to change these. I mean, my understanding is that I can change these settings at any time during the course of the franchise. So if I do end up wanting more high-end draft picks and more high-end free agents, like I can go in and change that. I'm not sure what would happen if I changed the strength of the free agents or draft pool, like in the middle of a franchise or in the middle of a season. Like, would all of the existing free agents or, draft prospects just magically get higher ratings, or would there be like a whole new roster of higher rated free agents and draft players that would suddenly be generated, possibly in the middle of a season? Or does the change maybe only take effect the season after that, when it generates new free agents and new draft prospects? I don't know. Again, maybe we'll find out. Anyway, that's all of the settings. So the only thing that we're changing is to set this to be a tiered league, which also changed the league size. But that's it. That's all we're going to change. So let's go ahead and start this franchise. If my controller will work. I am playing with the PlayStation 4 controller plugged in by USB, but the USB isn't super reliable, so sometimes it doesn't register inputs. Oh, there we go. I actually have to. All right, that's why it's not just pressing X to continue. I actually had to scroll down to start franchise. Ugh, stupid me. Insert Picard facepalm meme here. So here are the tiers. So tier 1. A lot of those teams with the higher salary caps and higher ratings, they're going to be in there. Tier 2, these should all be more middle tier teams. Las Vegas probably would be in tier 2 if it weren't the user-controlled team. But since I think, like I said, the game always puts the user-controlled team in tier 3, I'm in tier 3. So I should breeze through this schedule, hopefully, and probably get promoted into tier 2 probably after the first season. That's usually what would happen when I would play in past Axis franchise modes. Okay, so here we have the main Axis franchise dashboard. As you can see, we have a cap space of $103 million, and I think we were at, $247 million of salary used, so that should put the cap at $350 million, which means all of those most expensive teams were under the cap or right at the cap. But even though we have $103 million of cap space, we apparently don't have a whole lot of money on our own right, so we only have $53 million of actual funds available, which means we cannot make $100 million worth of roster upgrades. So that, I suppose, is a big limiting factor to your tier. So I would assume then that being in the lower tier probably means you have like cheaper ticket prices and probably fewer fans coming out. So you probably don't make as much money, which makes it harder to compete salary-wise with the higher tier teams. But, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe we'll see. I don't know. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go over to personnel, and I want to take a look at our depth chart and see what kind of talent we are working with. Looks like we have a young, possibly rookie quarterback and an almost identically rated veteran. So, and you'll notice that one of the interesting things about Axis Football's rosters is that it does not show a 100-point rating scale the way that you would expect from Madden. There is actually a 100-point rating scale under the hood. So, for example, if I go into team settings and I were to edit the roster, it is a 100-point rating scale, as you can see, but the game only shows you these slightly more vague letter ratings. And this is something that I kind of like because it means that you have to make certain judgment calls about which players you want to put at which places in your depth chart. Whereas in Madden, right, you one of these players would obviously be marginally better or worse than the other. Like Foster might be like a 74 overall and Griffin might be a 75 overall, right? So it would be very easy to just say that, Forrest Griffin is better, we're going to make him the starting quarterback. Although, there's the other considerations about like age and development and stuff like that. Like Raymond Foster being younger will probably develop faster, so you might still want to start him anyway, since he's going to be the QB of the future and you want to start developing him as quickly as possible. But for like other positions, like, this leads to interesting decisions, right? Because you don't just at a glance know which player is better than the other. So when it comes time to like, say, cut a player, you have to make legitimate judgment calls there. Or if it comes down to, like renewing a contract between two players that have, almost identical overall ratings, you can't just be like, this guy's 1 point better, so I'm going to keep him and not renew the contract for the other. So this is something that I really like. I wish more sports games would do stuff like this. More specifically, I wish that more sports games would leave some of these ratings like hidden so that you don't know what their exact ratings are, especially for younger players, until you play them more. Because, that's the way that real sports works. We don't always know exactly how good a player is or how bad a player might be until they play and they show us on the field. And it's always frustrated me that you just go into the rosters and you know exactly what player you should play. But anyway, getting a little bit ahead of myself. So we've got a young quarterback. We've got, holy crap, we have a really young run, age 19. Did this guy even go to college? Was he drafted right out of high school? I mean, our quarterback's only 20 years old too, which is crazy. Does Axis Football League just draft people straight out of high school? Because it doesn't list colleges for any of these players either. So, yeah, I mean, usually you would expect a rookie in the NFL to be like, 22 or 23, maybe 24 years old, depending on if they had a fifth redshirt year or not. But like, geez, 19 and 20 years old. Like, either these guys were drafted right out of high school or they like declared for the draft after like their freshman or sophomore years. Holy crap, that's crazy. But we have a couple more running backs, some older running backs. Richardson, Davidson, Higgins. I've been playing with this roster for a long time. And even though these are fictional rosters, one of the kind of fun things that Axis does is every year they do update them. They change ratings. They make all the players 1 year older. and some players get cut from teams. New players are added, and like new rookies are added to these rosters. So, it's not literally, you're not literally booting up this game and seeing the exact same lineup of players that you saw in Axis Football 24. Like, they're actually pretending that these seasons are happening like in the background, and they're adjusting ratings and rosters accordingly. I don't know how they choose how to adjust the ratings, but whatever they do. So Richardson, Davidson, Higgins, these are guys who have been on Las Vegas's rosters for years. I've been playing with these particular characters for a long time. Like, I know these names. Yeah, I remember when Andre Richardson was a little rookie. That's how long I've been playing this game. And look at this. We have an actual fullback position now. So this is something that I think is new in Axis Football 26, is they've specialized the depth charts a little bit more. The way it used to work is that there would be one running back depth chart, and the first running back would be your halfback, and running back 2 would be your fullback. But now they have an actual dedicated fullback position on the depth chart. This is really nice. So we don't have to figure out in our head what player is going into what position. Looks like we've got some pretty good wide receivers. I wish we had a little bit more speed. God, them all being C and C pluses, that's going to hurt. I might have to look for some speedier players in the free agent pool. And getting some speed will probably be my priority in the draft. Got some tight ends. Again, pretty good group of tight ends. And now offensive tackles. So this is also new. In past years of Axis Football, there would basically just be one offensive lineman depth chart. And the number 1 offensive lineman would be the left tackle. The number 2 offensive lineman would be the left guard. Then you'd have the center, the right guard, and the right tackle. But now they have split the offensive linemen up into their more specific subgroups. So we have our 2 offensive tackles, we have our 2 offensive guards, and we have a center that all have their own depth charts. So we can see we've got 4 tackles, we've got 3 guards, and we have 2 centers. So we've got a little bit of depth at all the positions. Our offensive line looks pretty good. It looks like it's a B plus, or maybe a B average, maybe a low B, a high B minus average. So not bad. Our defensive tackles, a couple more Bs. Our defensive ends, again, in older versions of Axis, there would just be one D line depth chart, and it would be, left defensive end, left defensive tackle, right defensive end. But now those are split up into 2 different depth chart positions. Very good change. Inside linebackers, we've got a bunch of them. Outside linebackers, we've got not very good outside linebackers. So this is something that I might have to look to upgrade in the free agent pool. Try to maybe get someone a little bit better than this C to play the Sam, or get a better Will and then demote Moses Bishop to the Sam. We'll see. Cornerbacks, this looks like it's one of the strengths of the team. Lots of B pluses. Speed is still a little iffy, but B's and B pluses should be okay. Safeties, again, there used to only be one safety group. Now it looks like they're divided up into free safeties and strong safeties. We've got a kicker. We got a punter, and a kick returner, a punt returner, and no long snapper, no other specialists, no gunners. One of the things that I did like about Maximum Football back in the day is that they actually had a depth chart for your kick gunners, which was really cool. Like you could specify, again, it was a college dynasty, not a professional franchise. So you could specify that you wanted, you just reserve players to be your kickoff gunners, and you didn't have to worry about like a starting safety or linebacker, someone like that getting hurt on like kickoff coverage, which was really cool. I wish more football games would do that. I'm a little bit disappointed that Axis doesn't. But anyway, kick returner, this is one thing that I actually am going to change. I do not want my starting running back being my kick returner. I don't want him getting hurt on kick returns. And besides, the thing that I want most from kick and punt returners is speed. So I'm going to put the fastest player available, Bodie Milford, who I do not believe is a starting cornerback. So he's my dime back. So he's not going to be in on every defensive snap anyway, which means he should have some stamina to do kick returns and punt returns. What the heck? Bodie Milford is a kick returner, but he should be a B+. I would think he would be a B+ punt returner too. Is he, like, for some reason, not as good a punt returner? I didn't see him in the list at all. Like, he should be right at the top for speed, right? He's a B+. This is something that I've seen in this game before, is for some reason, certain players won't show up in certain positions. And, like, it's not like cornerbacks aren't allowed to be punt returners, because here's Walter Blake. He's a cornerback. Can you not be the starting kick returner and the starting punt? No, that's not the case, because then Robert Webb wouldn't be here. And if I take Bodie Milford out of the starting kick returner job, he doesn't show up in the list of punt returners either. So that's annoying. I would like to be able to make him be both kick returner and punt returner, but I guess I can't. Wow, my backup quarterback is the next fastest player, huh? Okay. Are Walter Blake or Damon Murray or... Oh, guard. My next fastest player is a guard. Wow, okay. Blake and Murray, cornerback and free safety. Are they starters? No. Blake is a starting cornerback, so I will make my punt returner be... Damon Murray, again, just so that I don't risk injury to my my very young starting running back in kick and punt returns. All right, so that's our lineup. Again, I don't get to set a long snapper. I don't get to set any special teams positions. So next thing that I want to look at is I'm going to go over to the front office and I'm going to look at my coaching staff. So one of the big features of Axis Football is that it has a complete lineup of coordinators and assistant position coaches. So we have our head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and a special teams coordinator. And we have position coaches for each position group: quarterback, running back, receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, DBs, and that's it. And then there's also our regional scouts. We've got our 4 regional scouts for the draft. So every offensive and defensive position group has its own position group. I honestly do not know how much, if any, impact these position coaches actually have on gameplay, but it's a cool, immersive feature to have. But anyway, let's take a look at all of our coaches. One of the issues that I have every year with Axis Football is that for some reason, the offensive coordinator for Las Vegas always looks like should be a defensive coach and not an offensive coach. So you can see this is my offensive coordinator, but he has only a marginally better offensive rating compared to his defensive rating. He's a C offensive coach and a C- defensive coach. But the weirdest thing is he has a badge that boosts defensive backs. And I'm not sure if this badge does anything if it's attached to an offensive coordinator instead of a defensive coordinator. It says that it requires a DB coach, but it says DB coach plus. So I'm not sure exactly what that plus means. Does being an offensive coordinator count as plus, or does he have to be a defensive coordinator for this to trigger? I wish it would specifically say requires DB coach or defensive coordinator or head coach. right? So that you would know for sure whether or not your offensive coordinator actually activates this ability or not. But I would expect that this badge does not have any effect, but I don't know. And we are possibly paying a premium salary to who is essentially a glorified defensive backs coach who has been miscast as an offensive coordinator for some reason. And this has been in every edition of Axis Football that I think I have played. That Las Vegas for some reason has this DB coach acting as its offensive coordinator. Axis, can you please fix this for Axis Football 28? Please. Unless is this by design? I don't know. But anyway, just for shits and giggles, let's go ahead and take a look at our DB's ratings and see if they change when we fire this guy. So our DBs are, what do we got? Like B+, B+, B+. So Darren Hines, he's got a B, B minus B. So let's try to remember that. B, B minus B for awareness, man coverage, zone coverage. And let's see what happens if we fire this offensive coordinator. Well, first of all, can I demote him to being a DB coach? So, all right, Daryl Freeze is our DB coach. He's not a great coach anyway, so we will see. Okay, well, I have to actually fire him first. So, all right, sorry, Daryl, but we're going to let you go. So, I do always end up firing this miscast offensive coordinator. And I don't think I've ever tried this before, but let's see. Can I? Yeah, it shows him here. You cannot demote your offensive coordinator to a DB coach. Okay, so I think you can promote from within, but you cannot demote from within. So I have to actually fire the guy. So let's do that. So let's fire Wayne Waters. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess I'm now going to have to find both a new offensive coordinator and a new DB coach. So sorry to our old DB coach, Daryl Fries. You were fired for no reason. I guess it's a good thing that this game does not allow coaches to sue me for an unjust termination. But now that our OC with the DB badge was fired, let's take a look at our DB ratings and see if anything changed. Nope, B+, 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 B minus, or B, B minus, B. Doesn't look like any of these ratings changed. So, I mean, they might have, again, Axis does have that 100-point rating scale behind the hood. So it's possible that we might not see these ratings change, but even so, I would expect that if every DB's ratings, all their ratings went down by 1 when I fired that coach, I would think that at least a couple ratings would go down. Like maybe a C+ somewhere would turn into a C, or like this B- might turn into a C+ or something like that. But I don't see any change at all. So I don't think the offensive coordinator's DB badge was doing anything. So I feel pretty vindicated in having fired him, unless anyone can confirm that that DB badge actually would have worked on an offensive coordinator. The other possibility is that maybe those ratings effects from the badges and coaches only come into play when you're actually like in a match. So like maybe I wouldn't see that reflected on the dashboard here. Maybe I would actually have to go into a match and see that. So I don't know. But anyway, that does bring up one of the fun, immersive things that having this full set of assistant coaches does, is that if you fire, say, a coordinator, you can promote an assistant coach from within. instead of having to go to a free agent pool and hire some completely new coach. So let's go ahead and go back through the list of offensive assistants, and let's keep a note of whether any might be a good candidate for our vacant offensive coordinator job. So we've got a QB coach with a passing badge and a B- rating. We've got a running back with a B- rating. We've got a receiver coach with a B rating. And actually the offensive ratings for these guys are B, B-, and B. And our offensive line coach has a C+, so not as good. So it looks like our QB coach and our receiver coach could be a good candidate for the vacant OC job. But if we promote our QB coach, will his passing expert badge still have any effect? Because it says it only works for QB assistant coaches plus. So again, does this plus mean he can be an offensive coordinator because that's a higher position than, quarterback's coach? I don't know. But before committing to promoting an offensive coordinator from within, let's do our due diligence and look at the free agent options. Maybe I can find someone with a great badge or something that none of our assistants possess. And I actually have to go back in here to look at free agents, I think. So manage position. What is offer contract? I guess that would probably be for changing a contract. Hire a new coach. So let's see. Let's go ahead and look at... First of all, let's look at who has badges. What badges are available? So Maximus Everett, looks like he's already won championships. Garrett Barrett is a passing expert, so he could be a good offensive coordinator. Taylor Griffin looks more like he's a scout. And Aiden Stone is play action pro. I have no idea what that does. I wish there were a screen somewhere that actually explained what all these different badges do. And I can't hover over it and see either. So I have no idea what Play Action Pro does. But anyway, I wish there was a button to sort instead of it just automatically sorting when you move to different ratings. So I could highlight his offensive rating. It's a C-. So he's not, I don't know that he's going to be a great offensive coordinator. But this guy here, our passing expert, is a B+. Wow, but he wants $5 million. I don't even think our head coach is getting paid $5 million, so I probably should not offer a $5 million salary to a coordinator. So he's probably more head coach material. So let's look at our offensive coaches and see if there's someone who's in a more applicable price range. Maybe someone who's a little younger. Let's see, Matt Cooper has an A- offensive rating, a B- overall, and he's only 37. That's $3 million. 41. I don't know. He's probably going to be too expensive. Let's look at some of these slightly lower rated coaches. Freddie Slaughter. Let's take a look at this guy. B+ offensive rating, B- overall, 2.9 million. I think that's still higher than our head coach. Our head coach is only being paid 2.6 million, and our coordinators are making less than $1 million. I think our offensive coordinator that we fired was at $800K or something like that. Although some of our position coaches are making more than that. We've got a defensive line coach who's being paid $1.8 million, so more than our defensive coordinator. But still, let's go ahead and look at different options. Maybe there's someone a little bit more affordable, because I don't have a crap ton of money to play around with, especially if I need to upgrade my roster. All right, who are we looking for? Herman Nash. Let's see, 36 years old, 1.3 million. That looks promising. We might come back to him. Lane Quinn, only 33, 2.8 million. And it's annoying that I have to keep scrolling down to have to get back to these players. The UI could definitely use a lot of improvements. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we're getting into bad offensive players. So who was our Lane Quinn, 3.2. No, I don't think that was the guy we wanted. Was it Lane? No. Freddie Slaughter? No, it was the 2.8 million. Who was the guy we were looking for? Nash. I think this was the guy we liked. So $1.2 million 5-year contract. This guy's affordable. He's fairly young. And he'll hopefully be good at his job. So let's go ahead and offer him a contract. And he accepted. So we have a new offensive coordinator who does not have badges for defensive backs. And then, of course, we need to replace the DB coach who we unnecessarily fired. And while I'm doing this, I also want to say that I really do think that adding assistant coaching positions like this could be a great idea for Madden with its new coach abilities feature and weekly strategy feature. I have this vision of the game having like dedicated slots for each coach so that you can slot an ability in for every single coordinator and assistant coach and actually make those coordinators and assistant coaches more useful, because I don't know about you if you play Madden, but for me, I almost always use my head coach's abilities so that it really doesn't matter who I have as my offensive and defensive coordinator. Because like I kind of figure like, why bother using and then upgrading my coordinator's abilities if their success just means they're going to get poached and hired by other teams, and then all of that effort, developing them would be for nothing. So, just use my head coach's abilities, level those up as much as they can go, and then ignore, coordinator abilities. So I think it would be cool if there were dedicated slots where you had to pick an ability from each of your coordinators and then potentially from assistant coaches so that you actually use them more. It also makes me wonder if there are maybe ways for Axis to make these coaches a bit more interesting. Like, I'm not quite sure what exactly they could do, but like maybe they could be tied into the like practice strategy feature here, so that maybe each coach gets to choose what drills they want to do with the players that are in their position groups. Like maybe, for example, whoever I hire as my DB coach would have the option to either like, work with, say, pass coverage ability of my DBs. Or he could choose to only work on speed and agility for the DB group, or only improve strength and endurance for the DB group, or only do film study and improve play recognition for only the DB groups, and then hopefully also have an ability to maybe work on discipline to reduce penalties for the DB groups, and then so forth. And then each assistant coach would have similar relevant options for the players that are in their position groups. And then the ratings and badges of the individual coach would then maybe influence how much of a ratings boost the players would get from those specified drills. I don't know. It's an idea. What do you think? Should assistant coaches and coordinators have a more active role in Axis football, kind of like what I'm suggesting? And if so, what do you think they should do? But anyway, back to the topic at hand, which is trying to find a new DB coach. So nobody has badges. In fact, the offensive coordinator that I fired doesn't even seem to be in this list at all. So, like, I wonder what happened to him. Was he just removed from the game? Or maybe after I fired him, maybe he was just, like, automatically picked up by a CPU team? I don't know. But anyway, let's look for a defensive player. Or a defensive coach. And, we don't want... I think for these position groups, I probably want, like, a high development skill. So let's look at this Lane Quinn guy. I think he was too expensive, but he's got a B- defense and a B- development, C+ motivation, and C+ discipline. But he wants $3 million. So yeah, no, sorry, not for a DB coach. Coordinator maybe, but not for a DB coach. So let's look at someone else. So how about this Omari Nixon guy? B- development. A little bit reasonable, so Omari Nixon will keep him in consideration. M. Cooper. Taylor Griffin. He's more of a scout, but he does have pretty good ratings. How much do we want for him? 2.4? I don't know about that. All right. Lonnie Gardner. Wow, look at that. He's got a B+. Actually, this guy's probably better offensive coordinator than defensive coordinator. Ooh. Look at this. C+ defensive rating and an A development and A- discipline. This could be our guy. God, a little expensive. Let's take a look at what our other options are. But I'm liking this guy the most so far. Darion Minor. Let's keep him in the back of our mind. Minor. Let's see. Oof. Yeah, well. That might be it. God, I hate having to pay so much money to an assistant position coach, but he's like the cheapest option available, and he's really good. So let's do it. Let's pull the trigger. We got ourselves an expensive assistant coach. Being paid more than almost as much as our head coach. Yeah, maybe he'll be our defensive coordinator someday. All right. So that takes care of our coaches. So what is left to do? Take a look at our facilities. So this is another thing that Axis Football lets us do, is we can upgrade our stadium and stuff like that. So we have a bunch of stadium upgrades. So this is pretty cheap. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, only $800K. We're going to upgrade our field. Seats, these are in the millions of dollars. That's kind of expensive. Restrooms, I'm not going to upgrade yet. Then we have a bunch of training facilities. These are also very expensive. Definitely not installing a pool room. We have excellent practice fields, though. A film room would probably be a good thing to upgrade, but I don't think we need to do that, not at our tier. These are all pretty expensive. I don't think I want to pay to do any of these things, at least not while I'm at tier 3. Maybe at a higher tier with more money. And then rehab and transportation, also a lot of very expensive options. So, yeah, it's just the field condition, and then we'll leave everything else as is. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Team activity. This is all the stuff that we've done. It doesn't show the coach, any of our coach transactions. Oh, wait, Louisiana. Sorry. We're in Mexico City. Las Vegas. No, it doesn't say anything about our coaches. All right, well, Axis, maybe that's something to add to the screen. Coach hiring and firings should probably be in this screen as well. So I'm assuming we're also not going to be able to see if another team picked up I don't even remember our original offensive coordinator's name. All right, so let's see. We don't have any practice squad players, and our depth chart, again, we were pretty weak. We're okay at a lot of positions. Our weakest positions, I think, are outside linebacker. And really, that's it. Outside linebacker. I could maybe use some more speed in the receiver room. But I think the only critical need is an outside linebacker. So let's go ahead and see what we have available as an outside linebacker. I also might not necessarily need... Take a look at that again. I might not necessarily need multiple outside linebackers because I'm actually planning on running mostly a variant of a 4-2-5 defensive scheme. Because in past Axis football games, I've had a lot of problems with defending the pass, so I want more DBs on the field. So I might not even need a second, a Sam linebacker. So I might be okay. Although I think a lot of those 4-2-5 style defensive formations probably have my outside linebackers acting as edge rushers, so it still doesn't hurt to upgrade these positions. I don't know what is BLKS? Speed. Block? I don't know what that is. But maybe that's break block? I'm not sure. Oh, block shed is probably what that means. So let's see, what do we got? We have defensive ends who have C+ block shed ratings, and my outside linebackers have C and C- block shed ratings. So, yeah, we're better off putting our defensive ends as edge rushers and not our outside linebackers. So maybe I could use a better block shedding and pass rush outside linebacker. So that's what I'll take a look at. So I'll go to the free agent pool. Going to look at some outside linebackers. And what am I looking for? I want someone who's got a pretty good block shed rating. Well, this guy definitely does, but he wants $14 million a year. That's not happening. And then things drop off pretty precipitously. $5 million a year, okay. $5 million a year. Okay, well, let's try Cameron Clark. Maybe we can even lowball the salary a little bit. Let's see. Yay! Contract accepted. All right. And let's go ahead and take a look at wide receivers and see if we can find someone with some really good speed. First of all, let me double check what were our wide receivers' speed ratings. Looks like we got a bunch of C+. Even our backups. Like our backup quarterback is faster than any of our receivers. That's not good. I think we even have an offensive lineman who's faster than our wide receivers, right? Didn't we have like a guard who had like a B speed or something like that? I don't know. Maybe it's position group relevant or relative. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's take a look. I want speed. All right, so we'll look at Barrett Nash first since he's got the better catching rating as well. What is RR? Route running? I assume run block, fitness. Fitness, I think, is their likeliness to get injured. So let's see his. Gosh, dang, 5.3 million? Jeez. For a C+ player? Let's see if we can lowball this. Nope. Okay, well, we did get him. All right, so now we go to our depth chart. Oh, no, they went to our practice squad. All right, so let's... Oh, okay. All right, so I need to move some players around between my depth chart and my practice squad. So let's see. Are there any receivers who I think I can probably dump on the practice squad? I only have like 2 true reserves. So Luke Scott here, 19. He looks like he's probably a rookie. So let's put him on the practice squad. And I'll take a look at my linebackers. I think I had like 4 inside linebackers. I'm not going to need 4 inside linebackers. So let's see. We have a 25-year-old, Carl Halloway. And so, yeah, we'll put Carl Halloway here on the practice squad. He's a younger player, but lower rated. And we'll go to our practice squad, and we will bring Barrett Nash to the active roster. And we will bring Cameron Clark. Wait. Why does it say he's injured? Is he injured? Oh, no, I think that's just a key saying that if he were injured, there'd be a red dot next to his name. Okay. I think we're good. I think we're good. All right, so Barrett Nash. So there's not really a place to put him. Maybe I can make him a kick or punt returner as well. So do I want to make him my receiver 3 or my receiver 4? What was his catching? His catching is a B minus. Okay, so now I have a faster receiver. What about these guys? Let's see. He's got C plus speed. I assume he's going to be the slot. C plus catching, C plus awareness, run block. Yeah, no, I think he's probably good in the slot as our best run blocking receiver. Yep, okay. I think we're good here. Let me go ahead and take a look at kick return and punt return. Right, so we had a B minus. Wait, didn't I? Oh, did I change it back? So yeah, so I think before we had Murray in here, so now I can put Nash in here as my punt returner since it won't let me put Bodie in both. All right, and then take a look at our outside linebacker again. All right, so go ahead and move him up. In fact, should he be our starting Will? He has a higher overall rating, lower awareness, but he's a better tackler, slightly better in coverage, a little slower. Yep, I think we'll put him in as our Will and demote Moses to the Sam. And we've got 39 million left over, so let's just look at the free agent pool, see what is here. Do we need a third quarterback? Probably not. Yeah, not for that much money. I think we're good on running backs, although, ooh, an A plus speed. That is really nice. At 31 years old, damn. I think we're good on fullback. We just got receivers. Tight end. Was there an offensive line position where we were particularly weak? B minus tackle, right tackle. Both of our guards are B minus. Maybe, do I want a guard? Here's my OTs. And guards, yeah, that's just B minus. That's not an upgrade. Ooh. Got ourselves an elite defensive tackle who we can potentially sign for half of our remaining funds. So that's going to be a no. All right, defensive ends. Are any of these an upgrade? We've got a couple B plus players. I think they're going to be too expensive for us, though. Cornerbacks. Do I need any more speed in my cornerback room? I think my cornerbacks were good. All right, I think that should do it. And then we'll have our 2 practice squad players. Practice squad is another thing that I think this Axis Football could definitely develop a little bit further. Because, like, I don't think, like, you pay them any differently, right? So, like, if I were to go to Carl Holloway or Luke Scott's contracts, right? Like, he's still making $2.4 million a year on the practice squad, right? And Carl Holloway is making $800K, but, like, really this should be like $100K or $200K. Like, I think in the NFL, practice squad players make like $250K or something like that. So it is pretty ridiculous that we are paying a practice squad receiver $2.4 million and not just cutting him. You know, even if he is a player who we're potentially going to be developing over a few years. So that is a waste of a lot of money. So you can't really, in Axis Football, like, have a deep or robust practice squad like the way you can in Madden and the way, you know, real life football teams would. And that's something that I really wish that they would upgrade a little bit. But anyway, we have our team. Our roster is looking okay for, you know, our tier 3 team. Our coaching staff is looking okay. So that pretty much leaves only one thing left to do, which is to look at scouting. So that's what I'm going to do. This game does let you purchase a national scouting report, which gives you a bunch of extra information about players. It only costs $2 million. So I'm going to go ahead and buy that. And what this does is it tells you, like, what region to look at for each position group to get, like, the best players available. So we're going to go through here and we're going to set our scouting focuses based on this. So we're going to start on the West Coast. You know, we're playing in Las Vegas. So the West Coast is, you know, local or regional anyway. So we will look at defensive linemen and defensive backs. And what is there anything that is a good third option? Do we got any C pluses? No, maybe running back at C. So defensive backs, defensive linemen, and running back on the West Coast. So let's go ahead and set that. Defensive back. So the way that this works is, well, hold on. Were those defensive tackles or were they defensive? Oh, it just says D-line. It doesn't specify whether it's tackles or ends. Ooh, okay. So what I'll do is I'll split it up. I will do defensive backs, defensive tackles, and defensive ends. But anyway, the way that Axis Football Scouting works is that you set these focus positions for each region, and then it only shows you players in those position groups. But in the past, I don't know if they've changed this, like throughout the year, you can just go in at any time and you can change these focus positions and see other players, right? So right now I have 4 points remaining, I think 1 for each region. So I can scout a player in each region to get more information about them for the draft. So I can either use that to find out if these really good players are as good as they are, or go down and see if there are any lower rated players who are, you know, perhaps diamonds in the rough. So I have no idea what order I'm going to be in the draft at this point, because it's going to depend on my performance throughout the season. So, but I'm assuming that if I'm in tier 3, I will probably be in the first third, right? So I should have probably a top 12, maybe a top 13 pick if I get promoted into tier 2. I'm guessing that's how it would work. I don't remember how it works. Again, it's been 2 years since I played an Axis football game. So I'm probably not going to have access to Winston Goodman, because he's probably going to be like a top 5 pick. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to look at this Jefferson guy with my scouting point and see if he's maybe better or worse than a B+. And yeah, he is a potential A+. So that's going to be like one of our top tier draft prospects. I don't think this game has a draft board anywhere, so I can't like mark him as being a high priority pick, but we'll see. So anyway, let's go on to the Central region. I spent my I had 1 point in the West. I spent it. Now I have 1 point in the Central, 1 point in Southeast, 1 point in Northeast. So I'll do my Central. So first things first, let's look at, again, our scouting report for Central and see what positions are the best. So we've got linebackers and defensive backs. So this time I already looked at cornerbacks in the West. So this time I will look at safeties, and then I'll split it between inside linebackers and outside linebackers, because I'll have another opportunity in the Northeast to look at defensive backs and get more cornerbacks. So I'm going to focus here on linebackers, since this is the only, I was kind of weak on linebackers in my depth chart, and this is the only region that has like a really good linebacker score. So I'm going to look at both inside linebackers and outside linebackers. And then safeties. Let's see. Oh, it splits them up between free safety and strong safety as well. So whatever, we'll go with free safety, I guess. So let's see. Do we want to scout Martin Nash or S. Stanley? And it's also unfortunate that there's no other information for me to go on. Like, it doesn't give me any information about like their speed or anything like that. There's no archetypes like there is in Madden. So all I have to go on is their estimated overall and their position. So I'm just going to, I guess, do the first guy, and he went down to a C+. So, maybe I draft him in a middle or late round if there's not anybody better. All right, so moving on to the Southeast. What is our best positions in the Southeast? Like, this should be like the SEC. This should be some of the best players in college football, but it looks like we got a whole bunch of C's and D's. So, not very promising. I guess I can look at receivers, more defensive linemen, and DBs. I guess. Receivers, defensive linemen. Look at edge rushers, I guess, and more DBs, I guess. Look at more cornerbacks. All right, and our 1 point we could spend probably on Reed Reeves or Luca Anthony. Reed Reeves looks like he already has slightly more scouting done on him, so let's go ahead and put the point there. And he drops down to a C+, so we're not going to be drafting him, at least not in the first round. And then go into Northeast. Look again at our scouting report. We got running backs, receivers. The Northeast is actually the best region by far. So running backs, receivers, tight ends are good. Defensive linemen are good. DBs are good. So let's focus on receivers. We already have a pretty promising young running back, so maybe I don't have to prioritize that. So maybe do receivers, defensive backs, and then a running back, maybe? So let's see. Let's go this way. Receivers. Maybe this time I'll look at strong safeties, and maybe I can come back here later in the season after I've scouted a few of them and look at free safeties or cornerbacks. And then for the final position, I'll go ahead and throw in some running backs in there. Nope, not fullbacks. Well, I guess it could be a fullback. Who knows? Wow. That's a lot of really good players. All right, so I guess let's find out if these running backs are as good as they seem, even though, I already have a really promising running back. So let's look at the safety. Let's look at the receiver. Ooh, no, not good. All right, well, that's apparently all of my scouting points already. I thought I remembered having 4 in every region in older versions of the game, but nope, no more points. So the way this will work is that every week of the franchise, I will earn 1 more scout point. Assuming each scout will get 1 more scout point. I thought the way that it used to work was you would start with 4 in each region, and then you would gain 1 each week. But I guess they decided to nerf that a little bit. So I think that's pretty much all that we're going to do to set up this franchise. After this, we're going to be going into our first actual game, and it looks like our first game is going to be scheduled against LA. So in the next episode of this, which will be releasing exclusively to Patreon at first, so patrons will be able to see it before the general public, I will have our first game against the LA Tide. So I hope to see you there, and after a period of Patreon exclusivity, it will be released to the public, so you will get to see it eventually. But if you want to see it early, you can consider becoming a patron. Send me $1 or $2. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for watching. I hope Axis Football is interesting. I hope you enjoy me explaining my experiences with the game. I hope it's useful. See you next time.